Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pop Corner Episode 5. Today's episode will be over of course, Scream 5. It's been kind of weird to say that with each episode as we've been going through the Scream franchise. So it's like, you don't want to say, well, technically it's just Scream. There's no 5 anyway.
Yeah, it's just Scream right off the bat. But hey, that's what this movie's all about for the meta commentary. Yeah. Requels, baby.
Requels. And if you want to see the previous episodes in our lead up to the Scream 6, which we will be watching opening night, and hopefully having the episode out the same day as usual, which is usually Fridays on this channel. But with that being said, Falling Hurts, the name of the channel, that is me. I am Coleman, and this is my friend Draven, and he's on... I'll let him say it.
Good old sign back there, at Booins. Yeah. You can find me at Booins on literally everything. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. I streamed not once, so we're getting there.
I streamed Overwatch once on YouTube in 2017.
Did you get play of the game?
No. I don't even think I finished the game.
Terrible. Who'd you play?
Soldier. Because the VOD is still privated on my YouTube channel. Because I didn't know that it was going to upload the video afterwards, and then it showed up 3 days later because my internet was crap and it just processed.
Can I take a peek at this?
Not right now.
Gotta talk Scream first.
Yeah, we do have to talk Scream first, but before we get into that, something that we want to do, or I wanted to do, is a little bit of an icebreaker question. Something that's different from the topic for the rest of the episode that I thought would be a good way to, get to know a little bit more about your hosts.
And I have no idea what any of this is. He said that he was just going to full-on blind shot me with this when we start, so I'm ready.
And we can alternate. If you have something you want to, ask me at some point, okay. You can say, hey, I got this one. Or, maybe I'll say it. It doesn't matter. But, today what I want to talk about, I've recently been playing Dead Space, the remake from EA Games, Motive, whatever you want to say. And while I never played the original, I think it's a great game. There was a headline going around, I want to say a couple weeks ago, where John Carpenter, which, of course, that's Halloween. The Thing, big horror director, all these kind of things. He was talking about how there potentially was a Dead Space movie in the works, but he wasn't attached as the director.
Ooh.
So
okay. That would have been interesting.
In my opinion, Dead Space is probably most heavily inspired from the original Alien, as well as also The Thing, because the necromorphs in the game are very much... It's human dead flesh re-amalgamating into hideous, disgusting creatures that are trying to kill you, which isn't exactly the same thing, but it is what it is. So I guess my question to you is...
All right, let's hear it.
Going off of that, John Carpenter matches up, in my eyes, pretty good with Dead Space. Now, there could be Blumhouse Productions, somebody working on the movie. It doesn't matter. We're not going to talk about that movie specifically, but what movie would you want to see made about a game, per se? So what game would you want to see made into a movie that hasn't been done or hasn't been done well? And who would you want to do it?
That's a very heavy question.
I know it is.
Just straight up out of nowhere. Well, I play a lot of video games, so it's really hard to pick. And a lot of my favorite video games are niche ones. So a lot of my stuff are things that a lot of people don't play.
Right.
So, all honesty, if my boy Yoko Taro gets a say in it, I want a Nier movie.
A Nier
movie.
There's already an anime, right?
Yeah, but it's basically just following and retelling the game. So, it's not anything new. But seeing a new movie come out and be completely new, as long as Yoko Taro has a say in how the plot goes, because he's the mastermind behind every game.
Right.
And that's a niche game. Automata popped off pretty well. But the one before it, prior, Replicant, it wasn't as big. And I love those games.
Okay.
So, I feel like that would be awesome to see for depressing, and it'd probably make me cry in theaters. But as far as, a horror game, buddy. Evil Within. Give me an Evil Within movie.
The original actor for Sebastian, or the voice actor, I'm pretty sure he was an actual TV or film actor.
So he actually already had acting on TV and stuff, or movie screens in his career.
Yes,
dude, that would have been sick to see.
Let me look that up real quick. But so outside of Nier, is there anything else that you would want to see personally? Because I have.
I'm a fan of zombie games, my guy, and we've already seen. We're not doing Resident Evil. No, we've already seen. No, because we've seen Resident Evil movies. Pop here, pop there, pop there, pop then. They're bad. Honestly, I like the Alice ones. At least some of them. The
Resident Evil.
Yeah, Resident Evil movies. Some of them are okay. I feel like they get too much hate. They're not bad, but they're not good either. But I was gonna say Left 4 Dead. Give me a Left 4 Dead movie. It'd be really cool to experience the green flu, go all the way around the the world, and see like the type of mutations created in CGI, and see our survivors brought to life in person. I mean, live actiony stuff is very wonky for me. So sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can be bad. But That's if fair. Done correctly, I feel like a Left 4 Dead movie would slap hard. What about you? I'm curious to see what game you would want.
Sorry, I'm reading.
He's taking forever, dude. Man out here taking years. I want to have gray hair by the time this man's done.
I should have planned for this better, but I didn't know we were going to be talking about The Evil Within, if I'm being honest. Okay, so Anson Mount was the name for Sebastian Castellanos. Mm-hmm. And the actor, Anson Mount, was in... he's in Star Trek, a TV show, I guess. Inhumans, Marvel, some Star Trek, Doctor Strange somewhere, the Multiverse of Madness, aka Mommy. But anyway, that doesn't matter. What game would I like to see turned into a movie?
Yeah, I'm curious.
See, you would really think, because this was my topic, I would know more about what I would want that to be. But one of my favorite games of all time is Firewatch. And there for a while, there actually was a rumor, or even maybe announcement that might have went dead in the water, that they were going to be doing a film adaptation of it. And I think that would be pretty cool, personally, only because I think it could work in the kind of thriller, very small budget film. I don't want to say indie, but it could work for a small budget. And I think it could be interesting enough if maybe they tweak some of the story moments. Because, you're talking on the radio in the game.
Yeah.
In Firewatch. So I think if they tweak some of those moments, and really you only need probably visually one or two characters on screen, and the rest would just be audio, which that's pretty cheap in comparison to probably, physical actors.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd be down to watch.
That's what I'm saying.
Say my first playthrough on that a long time ago. Like, I remember you were talking about it all the time, and I finally played through it, and it was a great experience.
I love it. I don't think another one. I'm trying to work through my favorite games. Doom doesn't really work, as The Rock and Carl Urban have pointed out. That doesn't work. You can adapt it any way you want. There's no Doom Marine in that version. I never watched Annihilation. Probably wasn't good. But yeah, I have a harder time deciding. I think Overwatch would have a really good animated movie.
Dude, their animation shorts are fantastic, dude.
Honestly, just build a movie around the shorts that already exist.
I'm down. As long as they animate it exactly like the shorts.
Right. It would take an insane amount of budget.
100%.
I guarantee.
But, dude, it would be gorgeous.
But, probably enough wasting time for anyone who doesn't know anything about video games.
They're like, dude, get into Scream. What are you doing?
Let's get into Scream 5.
So, Scream 5 came out, let's see here, 2022. Last year.
It came out last year.
1 year ago. By the way, he was going to say that
Watch
too.
The movie.
Watch that. We're going in. Scream 6, we will have a no spoiler section, because I feel like that's one that people will want to actually watch. This, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. We're just going right here, right now. We're going to talk about everything and spill all the details. But Scream 4, 2011. Wes Craven made it. Wes Craven passed 2015-ish, something like that. He passed, sadly, but Radio Silence comes in here.
That's like the
new studio that's producing Scream 5 plus 6 plus if we go any farther. And 2022, it's been a whole 11 years.
Right.
So what do we think? Just basis, like new director here, no longer Wes Craven. What do you think?
I think they're, especially coming off of the last couple Scream movies that we've seen so far, I think there is a real shift back to the kind of vibes of the original movie, because there's comedy in all of the Scream movies, but in Scream 5 there's significantly less, and it's a lot more frightening, or suspenseful, I guess is the better term.
Thriller-ish.
Yes.
More,
and
more tense.
That's more in line with the original in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say the comedy of the original was mainly coming from references from other horror movies when meta moments.
Right.
Obviously Ghostface is just a normal dude, so you see him whacking around, falling around, being wacky, being stupid, which is still prevalent? Not really, actually. This Ghostface is ruthless, especially the.
I think it was necessary.
Yeah.
To modernize, I think it was necessary.
Dude, and you can tell who's who basically in this one a lot more than you could the older ones because one is very more stabby friendly. That they like to go all out, and then the other one's more so just like cool. But
yes.
What do we think of the opening?
The opening.
Scream 5, Tara, which is Jenna Ortega before Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Joke's on you. I loved her before Wednesday, so I was in before the popularity.
I pretty much knew her from Scream 5, so
same.
I can basically only say I've known her for a year now. But, I mean, I think she does fine in the movie. She's really not in it as much as you'd think she was. I mean, she's pretty integral to the plot.
Oh, yeah.
But she's definitely not the final girl in this.
Should have been.
But it's her sister, Samantha.
Yeah, Samantha is the final.
I think Samantha's fine. I don't have an issue with her.
Well, my thing to the opening here.
Oh, yes.
I'm just focusing on the opening at the moment.
Right. Yes.
I was just curious on the take of being the first one for the opening to the girl to live. All the other movies prior, the opening have been opening kills. Turns out Tara here survives.
I think it works in two ways. It works in both to keep the franchise fresh. There's, every opening was getting crazier and crazier and crazier. The first movie killing off the poster protagonist.
Yeah.
Scream 2, two people dying in a public place. Way different scenario. Just it ramps things up.
Different vibe, yeah.
Yes, and then Scream 3 is killing off a known character rather than a completely new one.
Who was very important to the previous stories, yeah.
And then Scream 4 was just the, like the,
the wacky
parody. Yeah. And that one was played for almost comedic effect, but they were all different. And this one was different as well because Tara survives. That's one thing. And that works in both to keep the franchise fresh while also, as you said earlier, kind of misdirecting, maybe getting the watcher to think, is she the killer?
That's what it played on me. Originally watching this movie, I was like, okay, Tara's dead. And then they're like, oh, she's alive. And then that entire movie, I'm just sitting there like, one person in the entire franchise history to live an opening kill. I'm like, I knew she wasn't the one behind. She got brutally stabbed. So I'm just like, maybe she's just like a mastermind. Like, I want vengeance on my sister for leaving me and all this and making my dad leave, which you find out. So like, I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, she's just a mastermind, and whoever's the killer is like going around doing it for her.
Right.
Which could happen still. Could. You never know. We haven't seen Scream 6 yet, but yeah, they misdirected me, so.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I really didn't. I never got the vibe she was the killer, just because of how brutal it was. It was taking a big chance if that was actually.
It's not like your little slice on the,
or even the perfectly spaced out spot where you're just missing all the vital organs down there. So not quite that either.
I also want to point out, I am the next Ghostface killer. I wore this for a special occasion. I am wearing a good old blue shirt here, flannel on top of a white shirt. And if you've noticed in any of the Scream movies, a lot of the times the killers are wearing flannels. The one in this one was. Jill was. I'm just new Ghostface out here, baby. I'm Scream 6.
Did Billy wear a flannel?
No, he was just wearing.
He just had the white shirt.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
I was just basing it off of like Scream 4, Scream 5 here. They were wearing flannels.
So this is our 5th week in a row watching a Scream movie and then recording an episode fairly quickly after. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, my brain is just Scream at this point. Like, in the voids of like my consciousness, there's just screaming.
Mine is always this. My entire room is just Scream, Scream, and Scream. I have all the posters like all lined up, 1 through 5. Got to get the 6th one now.
You got to love it. But I guess with that being said, Tara survives, obviously, the initial points of the plot. And then that's pretty much right straight into the introduction of a few other characters, correct?
Yeah, but we always talk about this every movie. And every movie we talk about the introduction of new technology, new things. I mean, like we said, 2011 was the last Scream movie.
Yeah.
You know how much has changed since then, all the way to 2022? They didn't mention COVID, which I'm glad. Thank God. But, they implemented... the
new technology system they introduced in Scream was a pandemic. They actually let the whole world try it out just for free.
But no, they have
Stay home.
I mean, she tried. But there's lock systems now. You know, she automatically can lock all the doors with a tap of a button. I'm gonna talk about like further ahead here. We'll talk more later about certain things. But I want to bring up just the new technology. We have that. We have things being brought up like Reddit, 4chan. Yeah. We have things being brought up as share my location. We have that in play here at later in the future. Like there's a lot of more electronic things being used, and it's always fun just to see the new age of every movie. Even like we're getting Scream 6 a year later, but you look back at Scream 1 and Scream 2, like even though it was a year later, they still implemented something different. So I'm curious to see what we're getting for the next one.
Yeah, I do wish the locked door things was used a little more than just the opening. I think that was the one that could have added the most suspense. But I think with what they used it for, like with the text messages, like, you know, did I get in your house before you could rearm? Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. I love it.
And people complain about this. We were talking about it when we were watching it, or I was anyway, telling you. I've seen people like talk about, oh man, this person still has a landline. Like, come on, be real. No one has that anymore.
That's nostalgia.
But I just feel like the original movie was based around all of that. The whole premise was landlines, home phones, like being called. Like that was the whole premise. Cell phones didn't really exist or were used back then. So I find it, you know, a little cool and a little awesome that we're still keeping a relic of the franchise in the movie. But we still use cell phones. Like we're not just like completely like, oh, just you know, like landline. Like Scream 6 trailer, like Gail ends up having a landline in her scene.
Well, I think inherently, it's kind of, I don't want to say the phone is symbolic to the franchise, but it kind of is, because it's like you can't go too far away from your house with your phone before it stops working or something. So it keeps you grounded inside the house, and which is super important to, like, I don't know, the intensity of these scenarios that we find our protagonists or characters in, and it adds to that value. Like I have to stay here to, you know, get help or something on the phone at the same time while also being called and berated by a potential killer. And then, you know, it gets the vibe where it's like, okay, have they entered my house? Are they in my house? Are they a prank caller? You don't know.
Yeah.
And I would actually love to see more of a prank call. I don't know.
Sydney got one.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, after the opening, we get, like you were saying earlier, we get introduced with all these characters. So out of all the characters, what do we think? I know we've seen like all the movies back to back to back pretty recently. Is this one of the movies that is more like your favorite introduction of new characters? Did you prefer the characters in this? 4, 3, 2, like... Each movie introduced a lot of characters. This one, again, has our OG trio, my bad. Our OG trio, so Sydney, Dewey, Gale.
Right.
But the new characters here, did you like them more than like the new implements in the earlier films?
In the previous?
Yeah,
I think it does a better job, to say the least. You know, like Sydney's boyfriend, right? In Scream 2.
Derek.
Derek. You know, our first introduction to him, he just kind of walks up with Sydney and Randy, correct? And
he was just there to shaft our boy Randy because Randy's trying to get the girl.
Right. So he, you know, that's really all of that introduction was. Yep. And we don't see a lot of these characters. But I feel in this movie, outside of the exception of a few characters, which I think I'll talk about here in a minute, I think we get to see a lot more, you know, especially considering we need to focus on the idea of having a new protagonist.
Yeah.
I think it handles it well.
But also, I think another thing that makes me immediately like think of these characters and like know all the, like we talked about in Scream 3, you can't remember like half the new cast names. Yeah. But with this, I feel like they start off like kind of like the original Scream. The original Scream, we see all our characters at like the fountain, and they're all kind of chilling. But in this one, they're all just sitting at like the park benches, or they're still at school, I'm pretty sure, but they're sitting at like the benches and they're having like an outside scene where they're all talking and stuff. Like you get to meet the friend group all at once and see them interact a little bit. And I feel like Scream 2 and Scream 3 and Scream 4 was missing this little piece here. And I feel like that's a good startup with our characters because we get to see all of them right off the bat. We get to see them all together. We get to see them interact, kind of like the original. So I like that.
And so we're both pretty much in agreement then that I think these new characters are introduced well.
Like there are certain characters from certain movies that I'm like, oh, I love them. Like Scream 4, Kirby. Like, you know, there are certain characters that stand out. But I feel like as a whole, like everyone that's introduced in the movie, I feel like this one has the most like all of them being good.
Yes, I agree.
That's my opinion.
I agree. So I guess with that being said, should we talk about our trio? Should we talk about the legacy characters? Go ahead and get those out of the way.
We'll go straight from the trio characters. Let's break it to you right here. Sydney and Gale didn't have a whole lot of screen time in this movie.
Scream time.
Ooh, the puns. But Dewey gets a very, very good amount of chunk time here, and he probably had more screen time here than he did in like Scream 3.
It makes sense.
Or Scream 4. But yeah, here's the thing though. This movie does something very, very depressing later on.
Yes.
But I feel like our trio all were here for a reason. They were all brought back. And sure, they were there for nostalgia purposes. I feel like Gale was the one that you could say was just, she's just here for nostalgia purposes.
I disagree.
But I feel like everyone, for the Gale
I disagree
part?
for Gale.
Okay.
Because I think Gale was crucial being involved for Dewey's story.
Yeah, I do. I do agree. But also, I think it's crucial, too, for leading up to Scream 6. Because it looks like Gale's going to be a big main character in 6.
I agree.
And I think this leads up to that.
I think Sydney is the one that didn't need to be in this movie.
She didn't need to be, but I respect bringing her in. I mean, she's the final girl. She's my final girl, and she will always be. Samantha, your hello, Samantha, will never beat my hello, Sydney.
Yeah,
so, but
absolutely.
Dewey shines in this movie. I'm sorry. What do you think of the trio, though? Do you think they were brought back? I thought they were brought back perfectly. I mean, Sydney, I feel like should have had more screen time, but...
I was actively thinking about this while watching it this time around because I've come to know these characters as time goes on with each of these movies. I've talked about how Dewey and Gale or Dewey more specifically in Scream 3 had no purpose, and then in Scream 4 it all felt a little more necessary, but I've been kind of struggling with the idea of which characters are relevant and which aren't, and who's kind of hogging the screen time and kind of the, the idea of the watcher. And I think Dewey was the standout of this movie, but it's
by far
clearly because it was meant to be a send-off to his character.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think that's done well. It's not something that you necessarily expect just because, hell, they've made it through 4 movies so far. Why not again?
I mean, when going into this movie, did you think they were going to kill off a trilogy character? Why do I keep saying trilogy? A trio character.
Yes.
You got spoiled.
Yes, because I was spoiled.
By me.
Yeah.
Well,
super fan over here.
Here's the thing. Okay, I wasn't going to tell him. I watched it in theaters like 3 times. This man, I watched it with him.
I waited for the Paramount release.
Yeah, I watched it with him and his fiance, like literally in person, like on the TV. And the thing is he made a comment about, again, spoilers, we're scratching. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch. But he mentioned something about Dewey dying, okay? And I thought he was
joking. I was just like, oh yeah, they're going to kill Dewey. Yeah.
Well, the way he said it, like I'm like, oh, And then he was like, wait, really? And I'm like, oops.
So
I spoiled it for him. I think I said it in the room with both of you, so I think I spoiled it for both of you.
I actually don't know if you did or not. But anyway, I think Dewey, I think it's a great movie for him.
I mean, yeah, do you think the vibe change was, because he's not as wacky in this one, so do you think the vibe change of being depressed and more serious was good, or would you rather him be a little bit more wacky?
2 things. One, if we're willing to accept that there was a complete vibe change, which on the surface I believe there was, I think
there's still moments there that shine, like let's say, when they were trying to discuss what the new characters, who the killer was, and then Wes, the character, was just like, well, why isn't it you? And he's like, it could be you. You got dumped by your celebrity girlfriend, and then you hit a bottle, and then and he's just like, Dewey goes, well, maybe you're the killer, and he's like, because that cut deep. Like, he still has moments like that.
Yeah, like there's that, or like there's even like the simple little, like, what do I want to call it? His little stumbles, like when he spills the coffee, or he sends the smiley face. There's the moments are there. You just have to
look for them. They're not as like in your face, like, oh, look at this man, like,
right.
Yeah.
Because I think what was done here, I believe this movie. I'm gonna really harp on Scream 3 because it's bad, but Scream 3 betrays the series' complete, tone, atmosphere in favor of full-on comedy instead of being like the slapstick on the side.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't do that, and I think that's why it works better. Now, at the same time, I do believe it is toned back a bit, And that's why this movie feels a lot more serious. Also, you get that vibe when Dewey gets killed. Yes. So, I don't know. Ultimately, I really enjoy this movie a lot, but
me too.
But I think Dewey is definitely where most of the screen time goes. And I knew this movie, and I promise, I swear to God, I'll let you talk. But I think I knew this movie was going to treat the kind of, bringing back the legacy characters in a satisfying way. When we were, I want to say like 20 or maybe even 25 minutes into this movie, and they hadn't introduced any of them yet.
Yeah.
And then we get Dewey, and it's just Dewey at first. And then he makes his phone calls. Mm-hmm. And even then, we don't get Gale right away. He just texts her. Yeah. So I think the movie is paced really well. It's a 2-hour movie. Mm-hmm. Doesn't feel like it. Feels like an hour and a half, honestly. It goes pretty quick. But overall, I think the movie handles everything pretty well. And I guess with you, what do you think about it? The pacing of these characters? And
I think the pacing was great. Like I said, I know that Sidney and Gale didn't have as much screen time, but again, we talked about how Dewey was the main focus here because he was our send-off, sadly. And good on them, because if they wouldn't have given Dewey the amount of screen time that he did and they still killed him off, I would have been even more triggered.
That's like,
Dewey's my favorite character, and I'm still upset. I'm not mad or I'm not over here sending death threats. I'm just upset that I'm like, my favorite character is gone, just like how Randy was gone in Scream 2. But the thing is like, it needed to be done. Someone had to go. I was hoping Gale. Sorry, Gale fans out there, but I was hoping Gale would be the one to bite the bullet here. Unfortunately, it was Dewey. But I guess it makes sense. And also, we had, and everyone was gone. Everyone was gone from Woodsboro. It made sense for Dewey to still be there. Gale being a super big, on TV personnel, it makes sense for her to be gone out of Woodsboro, and Sidney just wanting to get the heck out of there. She's like, I'm done with this place.
That's fair.
So it makes sense. And then Dewey he was the sheriff there. And then obviously he retired. So I just feel like it made more sense for his character to be there, and it made more sense to focus on his character. It pains me.
Right.
But I think the pacing with all the characters are great. Sidney obviously doesn't come till later, but Sidney, even when she gets the call, she's like, I'm sorry, Dewey, but she's like, I'm never coming back to that town.
Right.
So killing off a character from the trio brings her back, and it makes sense. I feel like that would be the only way to get Sidney to come back.
That's fair.
So as far as pacing for our trio here, perfect. I would have loved to see more time with Sidney and Gale because, again, they've been with us all these years. But I understand why they didn't. And we are making room for these new cast of characters, which are I wouldn't say they're,
I think they're just as memorable.
But yeah, they're just as memorable. They're awesome. They're great. All the actors are pretty good. I think their pacing was pretty good. We got a lot of time with all the characters got a lot of time besides like Liv. Liv like only
is
had
that the girlfriend?
Yeah.
Of the pink hair.
Yeah.
Right.
She didn't have a whole lot of time, but it didn't really matter anyway.
She ain't on the Scream 6 poster.
Amber didn't really have a whole lot either, but she had more than Liv, so it's like whatever. Those are the only two that I could think of that were like not on screen as much. But when you look back at like Mickey or you look at Roman, like they have tons of screen time. So I think that all the characters.
Shut up.
I think all these characters have great progression, great characteristics. All of them speak like different characteristics like the original characters. I think all of them have personalities worthwhile. And yeah, I think all the new additions, all the old additions clashed, works.
Yeah, I agree. I would have liked to see a little more interactions from Gale and Sidney with some of the newer characters.
Yeah,
that would have been fun. Is something, but again, we got to see a good bit of that with Dewey.
I also want to mention that this is the only movie where like Sidney and Dewey do not see each other and they don't get like a hug. Because like they always like see each other and like hug and console each other. In this one they don't, and I'm depressed about it.
They at least get a phone call, right?
Yeah, they do, but
virtual hugs.
Cries. New characters here though. For the beginning here, we obviously see like Richie and like Samantha. These are our two characters that we see at like the bowling alley, and they're coming back to Woodsboro because of Tara being hurt but not dead. She lives. Right. And then that's when, again, it goes to, like, the friend group. You see all them. So you get a very good familiar of all the characters, like, right off the beat, like, who all these characters are. And I wanted to also talk about, just in general, for the whole movie.
Okay.
really Scream 4 had a lot of this because of like Kirby and stuff, but I feel like this movie really paid tribute to the original of referencing other horror movies and like characters. Like they reference a lot of horror stuff in this one, I feel.
I agree. And I think the best way to go through the movie with some of these references, I think we should focus on the ghost face attacks.
Ghost face attacks.
Okay, so hear me out on this. So like we've already discussed the opening. You know, I don't want to say kill, but the opening scene. Mm-hmm. But as you know, instead of going minute by minute of the plot, which I know that's not what we're doing, we're talking about some of the
we're just
the references, like the inclusion of now Sheriff Judy with her lemon squares, and then Dewey. You mentioned that he had his sister's ashes.
Yeah, Tatum's ashes is on the mantle.
The first movie.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to kind of go through the events of the movie without getting dragged down by every moment is maybe kind of like focusing on each attack and then kind of
putting it together,
expanding out each of the moments. Or you
go. Yeah. I get. Okay. So let's go into attacks here.
So we can kind of skip the first one.
Yeah, we already did the opening. So the next person to get attacked is
Samantha at the hospital, but it's not a kill.
Is it Samantha yet? Wasn't it the Stu Macher's relation? It was
right.
the pedo stash who's just like, hey Liv, why don't you stop hanging around the kids' table and come with me?
Was he like a senior? Where was he at school? Why was he at school?
I don't know. Dude's just like...
Dude should... Yeah.
but again, with this kill comes a reference. So in this kill, he's outside taking a leak on like the wall.
Yeah, they're at like a bar.
He's like, F! He's like triggered because he gets kicked out for pulling a knife on Chad,
on a high schooler.
On Chad, which is his name, or Hobbs and Shaw. I said that so bad. But yeah, he's taking a leak, and then you hear the car turn on, and this is where the reference comes in from Red Right Hand. You hear that song
from the first.
I mean, it plays throughout a lot of the movies, but the first one it was in, so is where it really started. So he hears that, and he goes and he like turns it off, and he's like, he thinks it's like he goes, "Is it you, pretty boy?" Because he thinks it's Chad. Yeah. And then he ends up turning off the car, and he's like, "Okay," and he like sits up, he's like, "Huh," and then like behind him, Ghostface is like, just right
very
in the neck,
clean,
right in the
very
neck.
Clean kill.
And then that's when he's like, and falls over, and then it kicks back into Red Right Hand and finishes like the Red Right Hand section of the song.
Rice. I said rice.
Rice. I don't think rice is used in this movie at all.
I don't think so either. But
so he's dead. Did we have a connection with that character? No, not really. The only reference that he really mattered is he's related to Stu. So
we love that guy.
But after that is when we go to the hospital.
Yeah, because they're kind of happening the same night.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the hospital's after this.
That's when we kind of get the idea, or we should get the idea, that two killers. Mm-hmm. Or ideally, because, we've got the Ghostface outfit going on there, who we now know is Amber, of course.
Amber, yeah. And Richie. Richie and Amber are the killers.
Right, yes. So. We're going over, when at the hospital... he says he's just watching
Netflix.
Stab on Netflix.
Because he's never watched any of the Stab movies, apparently. So he's just watching it. Should have been on Paramount.
It should have been on Paramount. I mean, Paramount made the movie. It makes perfect sense. But
they didn't want to be, like, selfish. They did like, I don't want to give myself a shout out.
But hell, even at the time, Paramount was still only, like, just a couple years old.
Yeah.
So it's like...
I just love how he's like. I just love how he's like. I've never seen Stab, and he's like watching up. He's like, "What? I just want to know what to do if this keeps happening."
Right.
Richie was a great character. I don't care what anyone says. I'm so sad that he ended up being a killer because he was my favorite out of the new characters.
Jack Quaid is a very likable actor.
Oh, he's awesome.
He's a guy that especially if you watch The Boys, he's pathetic.
Yeah,
he is pathetic. You don't think he can do anything, but of course, as we know, he can. But not in the hospital, as he does attack Samantha while she's.
With this too, I didn't know if you were gonna mention it. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but like when he does attack, Billy shows up.
Yes. I guess we can go from there. Yeah.
So another reference is bringing Billy back, and this is before it's explained to Tara, because this is before she tells Tara. Yes. So she's like taking medication, and then she's like, "Oh yeah," and she looks at the mirror, and then Billy shows up.
Right.
And I love because it has like his white shirt still, and it has like the stab holes, and it's like all bloody.
It's like he's post. He's dead. Should be dead.
Yeah. So he's just basically like, he's like, you got to stop running from our secret, and you're,
Which, it does kind of make sense that that's how she sees him, because what's the way that she'd probably see a picture of him?
Yeah. being dead. Dude, that just brings me back to it later and what we were talking about upstairs. Yes. I have something to talk about later, but yeah, it's cool because like, yeah, when she was born, obviously he was dead. So the only way he would have saw was just seeing deceased pictures of him or like, you know, wanted pictures or whatever. Yep.
So I mean, I think it's cool. I think the de-aging looks pretty good. You know, I've seen Marvel movies with worse, and I know they for sure had a bigger budget.
So you like the Billy part?
I did. We really hated on the Scream 3 mom visions. I don't want to call them flashbacks because they're not, but I didn't like those because we're dealing with Sidney Prescott, a character who through the last 2 movies we haven't seen anything like this. No kind of interactions like that.
And like you could tell in the first 2 movies that she had trauma for her mom's death already, just by like what she said in person and like how she felt and like
her
what
virginity.
Yeah, but like. And then they just threw in these weird, like, again, like, weird ghostly things. Even though, like, one of them was in her dream. And, like, it's just, I don't know. We didn't need it. But, like, this.
It's a new character. Yeah. We have no frame of reference. And, honestly, it's nowhere near, I don't want to say as cringy, but as cringy. And it's cool. It's a nice use of a character we've seen before, not introducing the mom character in such a way. And I just liked it. It looked nice. As it appears throughout the film, it never stays too long. And it's honestly kind of tense when he's fucking yelling at her.
Let's cut some throats.
Yeah.
Dude, Skeet Ulrich is so good. But then after that, you get that little pathetic scene of Ghostface. She's like, which is another nod. She's like, why don't you just, because she was talking to Ghostface on the phone.
Yes.
And then she's like, why don't you just face me like a man, you coward, or whatever.
With
and then
pleasure.
Just like in Scream 4 with Sydney saying that. No, that was Scream 2. Pretty sure it was Scream 2 when Sydney says that. Because it was, I think it was Scream 2. And then she's like, why don't you just, show yourself? And he's like, with pleasure. And then he does that again. So that was fun, getting another nod at that.
Yeah.
And it was pretty pathetic because Ghostface is just like,
yep,
getting boxed around by tables and chairs. Man didn't do nothing.
Yeah, and then by the time she escapes the room, the officer on duty comes, and of course, Ghostface is gone. He's went back to the room to finish whatever show he was watching on Netflix because apparently he wasn't watching Stab.
Well, it's not Amber because this is where Judy Hicks comes in. And they were like, where were you? And then, because they were like arguing.
The questioning.
Richie was like, well, it could have been you. And then Judy was like, well, Amber was with me and I was questioning her and her friends and stuff.
Right.
And then Amber's like, yeah, where were you? And Richie's just like, watching Netflix.
Yeah. And then they have that nice little back and forth between the 2 killers about their alibis. They're each kind of like throwing each other under the bus. Great.
And then like Samantha makes a side remark and then Judy's like, we talk outside real quick. Outside. And then you mention it's like, oh, imagine just leaving Tara with the 2 killers.
Yeah. In a room alone, mind you.
Great.
But that happens, and then let's see who is the next kill or attack.
Well, after this is where they're like, we need some help. So then they end up going to see Dewey, and we kind of already talked about Dewey because Dewey is just like chilling in like a trailer park now. You see, he's like in a rundown trailer. Right. He's got a beard now, and they meet him and try to get him to like join because they're wanting to hear the rules and stuff. And he kind of gives them a little Randy rundown.
Yep,
it gives them a little experience.
It's a nice little throwback.
And then he was like the love interest.
It's the love interest, the boyfriend. He gets it off the bat.
Yeah, right off the start. First thing he says to him is love interest. How long have you known him?
Smartest character.
Yeah, but then you see that like he's like he like was watching Gail's show. Like he always makes me so sad. He like turns it on and like watches the show every morning.
I know.
And he's got a picture framed of him and all that. And then eventually he tells them to get out. And then that's when again he calls Sydney, tells him about it, and then texts Gail in a text message. And it's funny because he sent the smiley face to Gail. And then he's getting ready.
Sent the smiley face.
And then he gets ready to type out like I imagine like I still love you.
Yeah.
And he deletes it. It makes me so sad. But then that's when Dewey shows up after they leave because like they think he's not going to help. And then Dewey kind of like pulls in and gets out of his car and you hear his theme. It goes dun 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 dun.
Yep.
He just like walks in, and then this is where they meet Randy's sister,
yes,
Martha Meeks, and she has the kids,
the mother
Mindy
of
and Chad.
Yes.
And they have a shrine of Randy picture and stuff and all that, and Randy Meeks on there. And I noticed when we were watching, to the left, you know how Randy died in Scream 2?
Yeah.
You know the opening, how it was the movie theater and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
To the very left, there is a picture, and it's of the movie theater from Scream 2.
So he was there?
like, not that he was there, but like I just like figured that they were referencing like, oh, last time we seen him was in Scream 2. Like this was the opening. So they just had a picture of the stab opening night, like where we saw the two characters die. I didn't notice that the first like few times watching. I was like, oh, it's awesome.
I honestly didn't notice that, but it'd be cool if he was there.
Yeah. And also, pause. We missed this thing in the opening scene when she's looking at the cast members to like get the answers right, because Ghostface is asking about stab movies, of course, like Sydney, who's the main character, Sydney, who's the reporter, Gail.
Quick World Wide Web access. That's another
implement of technology. But yeah, she was like scrolling through, and you see like David Schwimmer for Dewey on the cast list, because he's trying to figure out who the actor for Casey Becker's character was.
Yep.
And what I love is Scream 3. Jennifer, she played Gail in Scream 3, and on that cast list it has a picture of Jennifer, and it says Jennifer Jolie or whatever her last name was, playing Gail. And I caught that when we were watching it tonight, and I'm like, I didn't even know that. I was like, that's awesome.
There is definitely a lot of like heritage with like Scream 5. Like pretty much every movie gets referenced in one way or the other, and it's really nice. It rewards Scream fans, because they talk about that stab fans at the end, like how the diehard fans don't get rewarded because they get these shitty stab movies. Yeah. This movie's the opposite.
I was just gonna say that back to where we were for the part where Dewey kind of met up with them, and they're all kind of chilling with all the kids at the time, where like Randy Shrine is and stuff.
Yeah.
That I love that they're, talking about requels. Like that's the meta commentary of this one, is requels. Mm-hmm. So you hear like Mindy, which is full on bringing the legacy of Randy out and being like, it all goes back to the original. And she's like, Halloween. And then she's like, heck, even Star Wars. Like she just keeps referencing all these movies and talking about, again, how you were saying that, all these movies that come out, no one wants a reboot anymore. No one wants sequels. They're all trash. We all want, tying it back to the original, and it always comes back to that. So Mindy kind of like says all that, and then they're like, well, who do you think the killer is? And she's like, well, it's pretty obvious. And they're like, what? And then Mindy's just kind of like, you, at Samantha. And then she gets ticked off and leaves. So
that would have been a nice twist.
That would have been cool.
That the quote-unquote protagonist is now the actual killer. But
I think the next kill, though, after this is when we go to Judy.
Oh, Judy and her...
Because Wes is what they named this character for Wes.
Yep.
And, yeah, Judy was driving, she leaves the house, and he's getting a shower, and she's driving off. And that's when she gets the call. And she's going by Sheriff Hicks or whatever, because that's her last name.
Right.
So I love when Ghostface calls her, and he just goes, hello, Sheriff Judy, like he emphasizes Judy from Scream 4.
Right.
And he's just like, what's your favorite scary movie? And she's just like, I don't like scary movies. I love like musicals and like animations.
Yeah. Great. 100% agree.
100% Cotton?
Could be.
But
good show.
Yeah, then that's when he was just like, you ever seen the movie Psycho? And then
because the son is naturally in the shower.
So she's like racing to get there, and she's like, please don't mess with him. He's a good kid. He wouldn't hurt anything.
That's
and he's
not
like,
enough.
He's like, so who cares?
Yeah.
So she ends up pulling in. She runs up there, and then they do a pretty fast one. You think like that he's gonna kill Wes, but he's just mid daylight even. He's just
that struck me as odd too.
Yeah. He's just straight hiding around the corner, which I think this was Amber anyway. She was just hiding around the corner, and then she's running up. She's like, I'm coming, and then she just kind of pops around the corner with a knife right there, and then Judy kind of like runs into it. Yeah. And then, that's when Amber gets a little pretty happy. She's like...
And then that's when we're kind of in suspense as...
For Wes.
Wes gets out of the shower, we're thinking, okay, why is he still alive? You know? Is he going to be left alive now? And is this going to be a complete misdirect? And the movie really plays with that for a good probably 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of... He's like opening the fridge, opening cabinets. Again, another reference, the lemon squares on the note.
Yep, the lemon squares.
It's like there's lemon squares in the fridge.
And pretty much, anytime he's opening something, there's, a blocked view of something. We're expecting him to basically close it and there be Ghostface. And for once, it doesn't happen like that until...
He gets to, like, the door, right? Doesn't he, like, lock the door, the front door?
Yeah, because the door is it's kind of not propped open, but it's, ajar.
Mm-hmm. So he just,
it's actually a door, but it's ajar. AJAR.
Shut up.
One word.
Yeah, they just like slightly locks it and just turns around and goes. It's like,
yep. And then it's a slight struggle. He says, "Fuck you," and then right through the neck, kind of on the side. I was a little, honestly, at first, I was thinking, you know what? That seems a little weird to show it right on the side, not right through the middle. I thought he might live at first, but it quickly, he drops to the ground. And this movie's very visceral. And it's a super fun watching these kills because the movie itself, like I said, with the toned back comedy, it takes itself more seriously, so it allows itself to be as tense as these actual kills are.
Oh yeah, I mean, heck, when he's killing Wes, like he doesn't just be like, and then like, I'm out, peace. Like, most Ghostfaces would do. They would like stab him or do that, and then just immediately be like, woo, I'm out later.
Right.
Like he's just again, I think it's Amber, and she's just kind of like just sitting there, just like, cool, and just kind of like watching him slowly die as he slides down, and then she's just like, this is pretty neat.
One thing before we continue that I wanted to talk about was this movie, or who made this movie again?
It's Radio Silence.
Radio Silence. You can tell they were, or whoever officially directed this movie, you could tell they were fans of Scream originally because they understood that Ghostface needs to be menacing and needs to have sick-ass shots when he kills people.
Dude, they make so many sick shots in this movie. I think this has the most coolest shots of Ghostface in any of the movies.
With the car headlights as he's standing over, or as she is standing over the guy in the neck at the bar.
Yeah.
Great. The hospital
scene is the best, dude. Yeah,
great.
But he looks so cool. But I think that's where Dewey ends up coming up because that's when like all of them are kind of going over to Wes's house and checking out what's going on, and that's when Dewey shows up. And Dewey and Gail end up meeting.
Gail makes her debut, and
that makes me so sad because she's like talking to Samantha. She's like, "I'm Gail," and then she's getting ready to say Gail Weathers, and she looks at Dewey and she says Riley. So Gail Riley is what her name used to be, and then she's like, "Well, used to be," and then she leaves. I'm like, no, but that's when they have their reunion, which god dang, it's so sad.
It is sad because you realize that in universe things could have went a different way had there been better communication, probably more than likely. And with that being said, of course it kind of, reminds the viewer, which I know this isn't the point, but that David Arquette and Courtney Cox were, of course, married, but they are now divorced. Yep. I think they have a kid together, right?
Yeah, they do.
But
co-parenting.
Amen. But I think what's cool about this is that they're doing some pretty intense scenes together as exes.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're comfortable doing that together is really cool. And it's sad that we couldn't see more of them together in the movies. But
heck, watching it the first time kind of made me tear up knowing their actual history in real life.
And then it's sad.
Them being like, Gail kind of just commenting on, I came here to check on you, and then he sees the cameras and he's like, oh, really? And she's like, well, yeah, they want me to do a story on this, but 90% is for you. And he's like, well, I feel 90% better. And then ends up just talking to each other about like what happened, like because the whole time we're wondering what happened, because the last time we seen them, they were together, happily married. So we're like, what happened in franchise? So like, obviously real life is different from a movie. So we're like, what happened to them in the movie? Right. And then you kind of just figure out that like Dewey left like after being wherever they were for like 2 months because he couldn't handle it. Right. Like Gail's kind of like, yeah, you were just meant for Woodsboro. Like he was meant to be at Woodsboro and protect them. Like that was his whole purpose, and he just couldn't do it. And then Gail was kind of like, well, why didn't you tell me that back then? It would have mattered and stuff. And then it gets pretty sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
And then this is when you find out, because the one cop is supposed to be watching Tara at the hospital.
The sheriff died, so everyone went to that scene.
She's like, who's watching my sister?
Samantha sees him, the one that has always been at her guard, and he's like, well, they needed me here. So she takes off, wants to beeline it straight for the hospital. Dewey sees her. He's like, I'm going with you, He's like, drive.
He should have told Gail. I'm so sad. I know he was like respecting because she was on air at the time. So like because he looks over at her and she's on air. Talking about the murders, and he was like, and he just leaves. But I'm so, dude, it would have been so, I'm so sad. But they end up booking it to the hospital, and this scene's cool because then we get to Tara.
Yeah, we get kind of a Tara POV. Really, honestly, this is the scene where she shines, in my opinion.
Yeah, because
like she's already wounded.
Yeah, and like she portrays it so well. Like shout out to Jenna Ortega, because when she's like using the wheelchair, like she's actually hurt from her hand like, getting stabbed through, so it's like bleeding on the wheelchair, and she's like, ugh. And then I love when she goes to like sees the cop that's dead on the floor.
Right.
And then there's no one else. Again, you're going to send someone to a private room in a hospital and only send one cop up there?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Really? Because after he's dead, there's no one else up there. And it looks like all the lights are off. Looks like no one's even up there at all. Like, I don't understand that. Anyway.
I think you'd want visibility if you're that cop. Maybe they're trying to save on power, save on some money.
I guess.
Hospitals are like that.
Woodsboro out here. But yeah, she ends up going inside that room, and she's just trying to use like the phone to like call someone.
Yep.
And she hears like a noise, and I love this part because she's like getting ready to like hit whoever comes through the door at the phone. And obviously at this point we don't know it's the killer, and Richie's not wearing the Ghostface outfit. He just opens up the door, and then she's like, "Bulk!" And he's like, "Oh,
Did you
man.
hit me with the phone?"
Yeah, he's like, "I was just checking on you. You okay?" And then he's just like, "Did you just hit me with the phone?" And then that's when Ghostface comes in, and then the good old iconic the slice on the hand.
Yeah.
And then he falls over, and then that's when Tara gets a little out because Ghostface doesn't immediately attack her. He just kind of like you see the cool shot where he like turns on the voice changer,
right?
And then he just kind of like calls Samantha, and he's like, "Well, choose which one do you want to die?"
Yeah, and she's trying. Is she on the floor at this point, or is she in the wheelchair still?
She's still in the wheelchair.
She's still in the wheelchair. She's trying to go towards the elevator,
and then he eventually like,
and then she is walking behind her, talking to Samantha on the phone, like, you got to choose. Who do you want to hear die? Do you want to hear Richie die or hear Samantha? Oh, yes, Samantha. Right. Tara die. And then he ends up throwing her on the floor, and she's like crawling, and he's just like, "Come on, you got to choose." And then he's like, "Choose Richie, and I'll kill him right here, right now." And he's like, "Well, if you choose to save Richie," and he's like, "I'll kill Tara right here, right now." And he's like, "I'll make sure not to miss all the organs I missed last time." Yeah,
that's such a cool scene. And then she doesn't answer, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna kill both of them." And then she's just like, "I'm just here stalling, bitch." And then the elevator doors open, and Dewey's like, "Pop, pop." Misses all of them.
Dewey hasn't been target practicing recently, so he misses. And then Ghostface dips. We get Richie and we get Tara. We get them to the elevator.
This is where, Dewey's trying to help Richie over, and then Ghostface comes back in, and they start tussling. I love this scene.
Oh, that's right. I love this scene
because they're over here like going at it, and then like Dewey's gun gets hit away, and he goes for it, and then Ghostface piles on top of him. Yep. And then Ghostface is like this, and then Dewey's just holding him up, and he's like, "Not today," and then like bonks him basically.
Yeah.
And then like gets the gun and shoots him, and then took one from Scream 3. Ghostface is wearing a bulletproof vest in this. Took one from Scream 3.
Right.
But
very unfortunate.
Yeah, so this scene, what did you think after this? Because after this is when they're getting ready to leave.
Such a great scene up until,
dude, they're getting ready to leave.
It was personal for him.
And then Dewey's like, "Oh man, you gotta make sure they're dead. You gotta like double tap them." And then they're like, "Who the heck cares?" And he's like, "I care."
Yep.
And then the door shuts. And again,
that's when you know.
Samantha could have went with him. I swear to fucking God. Anyways, at this moment in the theater when I watched it the first time, like the way it was shot, it's shot so well.
Yes.
And like the way he's just like reloading and like walking forward, I'm like, this is it, isn't it? I'm like, he's going out. I knew right then and there. And then, what did you think here at this point?
Well, Gale calls him, and of course that distracts him for just enough time. And it's a cool death, I gotta say, but it's insanely sad because that's the character that we care about, and one who seems too innocent for what happens to them. You get the knife in the front, knife in the back.
He gets a cool kill. And then she, the Ghostface at the time is just like, "Yes, today," because he said not today. And then he slices up, and then Ghostface is like, "It's an honor." And they kind of like kicks him over. But like at the time too, like Gale was calling him. That's what distracted him. Before, like the last scene you see of him actually slightly alive, he like looks at the phone and sees Gale's is calling him still, and he just smiles. Yeah. I'm like, dude, come on.
It is sad, insanely sad. I wish he had picked up the phone and said, "I love you" or something like that. That would have been cute. That would have been cool.
Well, apparently in scripts and stuff, he was supposed to have a more depressing thing. He was supposed to like be more sad and depressed up and like break down about not being able to save his sister Tatum. Like everybody's actually going to have him like, break down and be like, "I couldn't save her," and like, "I couldn't save everyone here," and that's when he dies. I'm thankful they didn't use that. I probably would have cried so hard.
Yep. But
this is what brings Sydney in.
Yep, Sydney finally comes in, and that's when we get a little bit of a tease of Sydney Gale team up, but we don't really see that come to fruition until the very final bit of the third act. Mm-hmm. But she also talks with Samantha a little bit, and she's kind of like, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? And she's like, basically, get the heck out of Dodge, right?
Yeah.
You know,
they were getting ready to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, we're gonna leave.
Oh, Sydney's just like, well, we need to figure out who this is and track them down and stuff. And then she's like, I'm sorry. She's like, you want me to go with like a survivor and like an old news reporter or whatever? Right. She's like, nah. Then she leaves, and it's funny because Sydney and Gail are talking. Well, Gail was telling Samantha's like, yeah, you know, they always say, you know, the original, and she's like, this is the original to Sydney. Right. And then
I wrote the book on this.
Yeah, they leave.
Literally,
they leave, and then they're talking, and then Gail's like, "What are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this? What are we gonna do?" And then Sydney's like, she's all calm. She's like, "I put a tracker on their car."
Yep.
She's like, "Isn't that something Gail Weathers would do?" And then she's like, "I'll take that as a compliment."
Oh, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I do love these characters when we see them, but we just don't see them enough in this movie.
Well, up to this point, did you know who the killer was? Did you ever guess who the killer was? I don't know if I asked you in this podcast.
I was leaning pretty heavily with Amber, but I don't think I ever suspected Richie.
I was going towards Liv. Just because she wasn't in it a whole lot.
That would be on brand for Scream as well. Have the killer not be. But I was always kind of on the idea because there's only been one movie up to this point that's had one. So I was always in the idea that there's two. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty confident. But honestly, anytime somebody was suspicious, I was like, yep, it's him. It's her. It's him. It's her. The whole time. But I never really suspected Richie. So I guess that's pretty good.
Well, then we go to the third act here. And what do you, before we even start talking about like actual third act juice here, Stu Macher's house. What did you think bringing back the original house?
Not only do I love that it's there, I love the reveal, and I love like why they're there because it's once again it's Amber's house, another one of the killer's houses. So
and also since this is Stu's house, do you like how it recreates the scene with Amber later in the garage? Like the basement garage scene where like she goes to get beer for Tatum. Like there's so many references back to the original that like it's crazy that it's not directed by Wes Craven. Like you could tell that they just love this movie. And I wanted to say earlier when we were talking about this, Neve Campbell said that like they sent her a letter as to get Neve Campbell to come back because she didn't want to do anymore without Wes. But they sent her a letter and Neve Campbell was reading it and stuff and it was talking about how like Wes Craven and like these Scream movies really got them into horror and got them into making films.
Yeah.
And like they love the franchise and they want to do them justice and all this and that. And like they got Neve to come back because of that letter.
That's cool. Like that is really cool. Actually.
It's awesome that they are fans like all of us and they really care for the franchise. And it wasn't just given to some money hungry like producer who's like, I'm going to capitalize on an old horror movie.
So, you know, kind of meta talk here for a minute. With the whole idea that Neve Campbell wasn't being paid enough for Scream 6.
Yeah.
Or wasn't offered enough.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a Paramount thing?
Yeah. It wasn't like the director.
Right. No, of course not. Of course not.
They wanted her in there because they already had a part made for her. Like they already had stuff going on for her character. I think what they said
they kind of combine that with Gail then, do you think?
I don't know. I just know that Sydney's part was supposed to be small anyway in Scream 6, I think.
Really?
But they do say that they do name drop Sydney and stuff in Scream 6 apparently. So I'm excited to see what we do with that.
Interesting.
But as far as third act goes, obviously they're having a party, just like Scream.
Yep.
Scream 1, we're doing a party again.
Great callback.
And
we get to watch Stab on TV.
Yeah, that's later, and I love the Mindy section. I love this. Mm-hmm. But you know, we talked about the scene where Amber goes down to get beer and like plays a little reference to Tatum scene.
Yes. Yep.
But obviously, Ghostface didn't show up this time. Well, technically, Ghostface did.
All right. But, okay, man. Gotcha.
Yeah, they're all partying, and then this is when like Richie and Samantha and all them come in because they're looking for an inhaler for Tara because she doesn't have one.
Okay.
That's what she needs an inhaler for. So they left at Amber's house, so they have to go over there. And when they go there, Richie's like, all right, party's over to get everyone out because there's a killer on the loose. And they're all just like leaving. They're like, oh man, you, screw you. And then Richie's like, yep. He's like, saving your lives. You're welcome. And then he's like, thanks for leaving the cup because one of them like threw the cup.
Right.
And this is when it's just all our characters now. And
yep.
Well, actually, this might have been before the party, but Chad and Liv were kind of making out on the couch. And
before the party ends. Yeah. So, during the party. And then he's like,
yeah, she's like, let's go upstairs. She's like, let's go upstairs. And immediately turns her off by just being like, he's like, I'm mostly certain you're not, but he's like, you could possibly a little tiny bit be the killer. Just in case, let's not do that. She gets triggered, storms out. And this is where the location comes into play, because he's telling, Mindy was like, nice one. And then he ends up going out looking for it, and she's like, take a weapon, and he ends up like taking like a little lamp or something.
Right.
And he's like, and she's like, all right.
Do we want to go ahead and follow his plot line and get the rest of his conversation out of the way now while he's going out to look for her?
What do you mean?
Like, we're going to be dealing with these kind of branching plot lines.
Yeah.
Do we just want to stick with Chad?
Yeah, let's just do Chad.
He goes outside.
Let's just Chad. Yeah. Okay. So then Chad ends up going outside, right?
Yep.
And then he ends up like, it's funny because he was like really skeptical and not wanting to go upstairs and do the big bang, but then he goes out by himself in the dark and turns on a location sharing app with her, and I'm like, what? I thought that was a little dumb, but okay.
I think he maybe thought he messed up and he was trying to get back in good graces.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not completely dumb, because he like starts going, he's like, live, and he like goes a little bit farther out, and then like it's telling him to go a little bit farther into like the woods or whatever.
Right.
And he was just like,
probably not.
He's like, nah, and he just turns around, and Ghostface kind of like right in like the thigh or something. You remember that?
Yeah. And then is this when he goes to hide against the shed?
Yeah, and then eventually he leaves to run back to the house, and then Ghostface comes out of the shed.
Right out of the shed. Yep.
Cool scene too. Dude's so cool. He just comes out like, he's like, no. Somehow he lives. Can we talk about that? What did you think about him living? Did you
kind of? I mean, if he was goofier, he'd be the new.
That's what
Dewey.
I kind of figured they were trying to play on, as him being the new Dewey, but
he's not quite
as goofy
enough.
Yeah.
But he's got time to shine. He'll be in the next one. I hope he's in it more. I think he was, of all the characters that survive.
Yeah, he had the less screen time.
He was the one that was utilized the least. Where the sister got some decent quips in throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah, Mindy was basically the new Randy here, and it was a good new Randy. Like, it doesn't beat Randy, I don't think, but it definitely beats like Mickey or Robbie, Charlie. Kirby does a really good Randy.
I'm excited to see
them interact.
They interact.
Oh, that'd be they're just spitting horror movies back and forth. That'd be awesome. But yeah, Chad lives. I didn't think they were going to do that. I thought he was a goner.
I did too.
But
especially considering they already did that kind of with Tara, like getting beat the fuck up with a knife, like having two like. These guys are just bad killers.
Yeah, I mean, is that a negative for you? Did you want him to die, or is like that cool? That like, did it bother you at all that he lived?
I did kind of. I only have 2 negatives for this movie, and when we get into ratings, I'll talk about them a little more. But
I was just trying to get more opinions rather than beat by beat stuff.
It's not so much who lived and died; it's more the fact that I do believe there was a little too many people that lived. Yeah, we introduced probably about the same amount of new characters as the original Scream movie, in fashion, but we killed off, and had killers out of maybe a half of them. By the time it's all said and done, so that leaves half of the friend group still alive. Whereas the first movie, we've got 2 from the friend. Well, technically, if you're counting.
Well, are you talking like the end of third act here? Like for the
by the end of the
Scream.
movie,
yeah, the original Scream movie at the very end, you only have like Sidney, Gale. I mean, Dewey's alive.
We've got Dewey, Sidney, Gale. We've got the trio plus Randy.
Randy, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 4, and then I think this movie just.
I would think I would have loved to have seen more kills, but Chad living I was fine with because his character was fun. He didn't have a whole lot of time to shine. So again, I'm excited to see what he's like in 6. But after this, Liv is kind of off the grid for a while. You don't see her anymore for a long time. And again, the party ends up quitting, so everyone that's not our characters leaves.
Yes.
And this is where all the characters that are left are here, and this is like the end in third act. And I think this is where Liv does end up coming back later and meeting up with Mindy watching TV, because Mindy was kind of telling Liv, like, you can't be the killer, you're boring.
You're boring, yeah.
And she ends up kind of going
psycho. Freaking psycho.
Yeah, she goes psycho mode. She's like, did you think that I killed him? And she's like, do you know what happens to the experts? And she's like...
That's another thing this movie does that I'm not really that big of a fan on. It seems like almost every person at one point, except for, Richie is one of them. There's so many characters, it feels like, at least, and I know I can think of 2 off the top of my head in the third act alone, where they tease that they're the killer.
Yeah, they do a lot of misdirects.
Like, what if I'm the killer? What if it's me?
Oh, you're talking about the scene with the beer? Yeah.
Well, there's that. Yeah. There's Liv. I mean, there's 2 in the final act right there. And that part felt a little sloppy, even though one of them actually was the killer, so that makes her look psycho in the end.
I love this, though, because after this is when, like, everyone kind of splits up and everything, and then they eventually all come back together again, and Liv has bloody hands, so everyone's kind of like, oh, God, and then they're all together, and Liv's just like, I'm not the killer, is basically saying, I found Chad like this, I was trying to help, I'm not the killer. Right. And I love this reveal, because every other movie besides Scream 4 with Charlie, they all, take off the mask. Like, this is I guess Stu, he kind of was just like around the corner, but you originally, like, most of the killers are like unmasked, but none of them
the initial reveal.
Yeah, and like immediately when Liv's like, I'm not the fucking killer, and then Amber's like, I know. Bop! Right through the head, dude. And it was a crazy scene because everyone's like, what the heck? And everyone just kind of splits.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? Do you prefer that type of just like out of nowhere ghost face reveal, or do you prefer the traditional like wearing the robe and mask and then take off? Because even Richie didn't get a traditional like robe mask take off.
Right.
So every character in this movie that was a killer didn't get that traditional reveal. So what do you think?
Much like the opening scene, I think it works really well as like a subversion of, franchise tropes, expectations, things like that. I really enjoy that when it's not something that's like, hey, we have to be different. Mm-hmm. And it didn't feel like it. It just felt more like these guys they're fans of other people's works. They're going to be a little less and more derivative all at the same time. More so in the sense that, she's living in Stu Macher's house. I know that wasn't her call, her parents, whatever. But...
parenting, dude, comes back to parenting. Literally bought the house. It's all their fault.
Yeah, be better parents. That's all I can say. But
don't buy a serial killer's house. Come on, dude.
They probably got it really cheap. That's honestly why.
But the house is so nice. God dang.
Well, all their extra money went into renovating. Not really, restoring probably, if anything.
So you're cool with the reveals then? Because I am. I 100% love the reveals.
I thought it was fine. Something that we didn't really talk about oh wait. No, I guess this didn't happen yet. Something we need to talk about is that at this point we still don't know that Richie is the killer.
I love the way I love the way he is kind of given off it way better actually because of the misdirect, which I know what you're talking about too.
And we get him separate once everyone takes off from the gunshot of Liv. We get kind of a little bit of one-on-one time with Samantha and Richie, where he's basically kind of saying, "Don't go up there. We don't know."
Yeah, she has a gun, and usually there's two killers in these things.
And he's the one that says, usually there's two killers. And then she kind of suspects him first. Yeah. At least she doesn't trust him necessarily.
Well, Richie kind of pins it on Tara. Because he's like, Tara lived these things, and usually all the movies I've seen, they all die. So maybe she's in on it.
So I think he is, again, between the acting of Jack Quaid and kind of the way his plot points are brought forward, I think it really is a great misdirect of, I don't even usually suspect him. Like I said earlier, he was one of the characters I didn't really expect.
Me either.
And I honestly, as far as the comedy goes, he seemed more like the comedy relief.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. No big deal there. But as we, get in a little bit further, we kind of get those two characters separated. And then that is pretty much when...
This is when Sydney and Gail are kind of pulling it. Well, they call Samantha, too, to tell her that, like, yo, you're in Stu Macher's house, because this is when it reveals. Because it does that cool shot where it's, like, sideways, and she's, like, out in the front, basically. And it, like, zooms out, and then you see it's Stu Macher's house.
Right.
And then that's when they were like, you're in Stu Macher's house, you need to get out there. The killer brought you here for a reason.
Right.
And then
they're on the front... They pull up on the front lawn. They're looking.
This is where Amber tries to
Amber
fake
comes out. She's doing this.
She's like, oh, and then
that's a callback, isn't it? In a little bit of a way, because that's kind of almost kind of what Stu does with Randy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A little bit different. It's different perspective. That's from inside the house looking out.
Well, I mean, Dewey does that because Dewey, like when Sydney's like, Dewey, like looking for him, then he has a knife in the back. He like comes out of the front. He's like, Sydney, and then he like falls over. Yeah. I love this though because like Sydney and Gail are just sitting there, and then she's like over here pretending to be hurt. She's like, oh, the killer's in there. Yeah. I'm hurt. And then they're just like, Sydney's like, Sydney's like, what do you think? And Gail's like, it's a trap. And then she's like, fuck it. And then
it's still too late. And then
shoots Gail.
Amber shoots Gail on the side. Gail goes down for a little bit. And
this is where Sydney goes in, and we follow Sydney around because this is when she gets her call, and then we hear the classic "Hello, Sydney," and
very nice.
Oh, it was so nice to hear. But I love this because Sydney is fed up, dude. She is over it.
I'm bored.
I love that because she's like, she announces to the house that if anyone's in these rooms and closets, like, come out now, she's shooting. And I love how the first place she goes to is the closet that she hid in the original, where she comes out with the umbrella and stabs Billy.
Right.
So she ends up shooting that and then goes up the stairs, shoots some doors, and then she's still on the phone. And then Ghostface is like, you've never seen one like me before. And then she's just like, and then he was saying something about like, well, here's like, I forget how he was even wording his last phrase.
I don't even remember. It didn't matter. He
gets cut off because anyway. He's saying, and then she's like, I'm bored. And then she ends up shooting the door. And then Jack Quaid's character, Richie's in there.
Yep. And then he still plays it off like he's innocent. He was just hiding. But she doesn't have enough time to really think or react to it because I had the hiccups.
This is the misdirect, too, because you already know Amber has been seen. So you're like, okay, so whoever is the other Ghostface we're looking for. And then
we don't know,
we see Richie just sitting there. He's like, you're shooting everything like a maniac. He's like, I'm not coming out. And then Ghostface comes out of the closet that's like right next to Sydney. And then I love Richie because he's like, holy shit, it's Ghostface. He like starts freaking out.
Did that feel weird to you, like saying Ghostface?
Oh, like hearing Ghostface?
Like, I mean, we as actual
That's what we call them, but like they've never really said Ghostface.
Do they? Yeah.
Not a lot, no.
They say he's got a ghost mask or ghost face mask on, but they never refer to it as like
Ghostface.
Like Michael Myers. Oh, it's Michael Myers, or like it's
Jason Voorhees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's no mythical figure. It's just a mask.
Yeah.
But then it felt weird to me, but it's like, you know what? It really plays into the idea that maybe he's more of a fan than he lets on.
Could be, yeah, kind of gives you a little bit more information. Like, hey, this guy is in it. Right. But like, you don't think of that because then you're like, well, we've already seen Amber, and the person who's dressed up here is probably the other killer.
Right.
And like, they both like, Ghostface grabs like Sydney, or Sydney grabs her, Ghostface, and they like tumble over the stair banister.
Yeah.
And then like they're both knocked out on the floor, and so is Samantha. Samantha's on the floor here too, I think, at one point. Or she comes in later, I forget.
I think she comes in.
She comes in later, yeah. Because, they're both stumbling, Ghostface and Sydney's like, get the gun. And he's like, the knife. Or whatever, a gun or knife, I forget.
It was a gun.
Yeah. Yep. And then he's like, get the gun. And then...
kind of hard because he shot me in the leg.
And that's when Samantha comes in and grabs the gun. And they're like, yes, yes. And then he comes running, tumbling down the stairs. And he's like, oh, thank God. And then just... whoosh, knife right into Samantha's stomach.
He goes, I'm so glad you're okay. He goes, I'm so glad you're okay.
So I can do this.
Yeah. So because I really wanted to be the one to kill you.
Yeah.
And
because then the Ghostface obviously is Amber underneath, which I thought was awesome. I don't know what you thought, but I thought that misdirect is awesome because the whole time when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, this is the other Ghostface, so it can't be Richie because Amber was already revealed. But they did a little switch there where Amber put the Ghostface outfit back on. Yeah. So that was cool. I love that.
It was a like I said, I think it's all planned really well with suspense. The misdirects, I think, work well. They're not ham-fisted. It's not faking their deaths like Scream 3, with Roman.
Yeah, Roman. Yeah. I'm not really a fan of the whole fake death things. Wasn't there another one?
Because we just don't know that. Like, there's no way we can know that.
It's kind of cheesy just to do it off screen.
Yes. Okay.
It's really cheesy to do that.
Which he had to do because there wasn't another Ghostface. They could be in on it. Mm-hmm. The only time it ever really kind of worked was, and it wasn't even a full-on death, but the fake blood in Scream 1.
Yeah, but Scream 1 worked.
But it looked fake.
Yeah.
Even in the movie, all the other blood was higher quality, and this stuff looked fake. It looked pink rather than red. Well, it reminded me of Saw 3D.
But also, like, Billy was on screen. Like, you see Ghostface come up and stab. It's not like Roman's just, you see him down there by, like, that like coffin area where the coffin's at with the prop, and you just see him just kind of like look up and have a worried face, and then we never see him again. And then Gale goes down there and opens it, and then he just apparently has a knife in his chest. Like, I wasn't a fan. I'm not a fan of off killings like that. So, but Billy was great because again, you see Ghostface come up to him and stab him, and he's like, and he falls over and dies, and that was fine. That was played perfectly. But Roman's, I
agree. So this is the point where Gale re-enters, but our killers have the upper hand.
Yeah.
They have the gun, they have the knives, and they want to move everyone to the kitchen. Right?
Well, they move Sydney and they move everyone there at first, but then eventually everything gets split up. But they're all there at first, and then they're kind of talking about their motive. Did you like this motive? Because motive is a really big thing for you when watching Scream, because there's a lot of motives that you're like, oh, this is good. Like the original, you love the original motive of like the mom and wanting to get revenge, but I think you like 2 as well, like Mom just wanting to get revenge for Billy in the first one, wanting to get revenge for...
I didn't like Mickey's.
I meant Billy's, though. You like Billy's wanting to get revenge for his mom leaving. That's why he's going after them. You just didn't like Mickey's, and you didn't like Scream. Did you like Scream 3's motive? You just didn't like the reveal, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed the motive. I didn't enjoy any of the setup or reveal. Yes.
Now for Scream 5 here, what are your opinions? Do you like the whole... Because their whole motive is that stab movies suck. Now, that's it. Their whole motive is like, how can fan base be toxic and all this? And then they're like, we need good movies. And there are people who are crapping on our franchise because there hasn't been a good movie since the first one.
I think it's funny, but I don't... And like, it almost kind of plays for comedy at that point. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
But I'm not a big fan of the motive, but I think it's outshined by how well set up the characters are.
I agree.
So it's always always the push and pull.
It's like the opposite of like Scream 3, where like his motive is fantastic, being a lost long brother and stuff, but like everything else with Roman is kind of like eh. But like these characters, everything's amazing, but then their motive's just like it's okay, because like they're just like crazy movie fans, which I didn't hate. Like I still like it. I think it's fun, but it's not like your serious like revenge or anything like that where there's like something tagline to it. Like Scream 6, Ghostface already looks like he's out for blood, so it looks like he has like a more serious motive rather than just like I want movies to come back and be good.
Right. Yeah, I do enjoy it overall, but then as far as plot goes, we get our legacy characters and our new characters kind of together. Legacy character segmented off, of course. Because Amber goes to go and get Tara, correct?
Yeah, because Tara's not... Because Richie's just like, go get Tara, and then Amber couldn't find her, and then Samantha was like, you're not as persuasive as you thought, because he thought that the way he was telling, it could be Tara for the second killer, that he wouldn't untie her.
Right.
But she does.
Yep.
And that's funny, because Amber like walks around the corner like, I can't find her, and then you see Tara with like her crutch just beat the heck out of him. Mm-hmm. It's so fun.
And then...
Sydney gets stabbed because of the way they're like moving and stuff, and then like one of them like stabs her in the stomach.
That happened when they brought him into the kitchen, if I remember.
But this is kind of where they split up, because like Samantha kind of runs away, so Richie ends up following her.
Yep.
And then Amber ends up staying with the trio here. Well, not the duo now, because Dewey's gone.
Yep.
So what I like about this too, I don't know how you thought or if you even paid attention. I said it earlier, but I like how they let our OG characters kill off a Ghostface, and they let our new characters, Samantha, kill off a new character.
Yes. Yeah.
So like they both got to put in some work on each Ghostface.
They also both, it was set up in such a way that they're taking out the ones that they had the emotional connection to.
Because it's confirmed that Amber is the one that took out Dewey.
Right.
Which,
so sad.
Screw you. But yeah, they end up, I love the hand sanitizer. They like break the glass bottle on her head. She's like, what the heck, hand sanitizer?
Yeah.
And then
both kills were pretty fun.
Yeah, they were great. I think I keep saying Billy. I'm thinking of Scream 1 now.
Saying Billy.
I love Richie's more. I mean, Amber's is funnier, and I do like how Gail gets the justice to shoot her in the head.
Yeah.
And like shoot her, not really in the head, but in the chest, and then she ends up falling back on the flames, and then the hand sanitizer.
Yeah, then Tara shoots her in the head.
Yeah. Yep. But the hand sanitizer flames her up, and then she like burns, and you think she falls over, and you think she's dead.
Yep.
And then you go to Samantha and not Billy.
Well, Richie. Yes, actually Billy. Because
technically
we get a little bit of Billy.
Because they're wrestling around, and then the knife's on the ground, and like, yeah. And she's like looking for the knife and trying to reach for it, and Billy's just like, yeah, do it. And then she's like, she basically like says a rule for the new rules. She's like, don't mess with a daughter of a serial killer.
Yeah.
And then like right through like his cheeks.
Oh,
and then he falls over, and then she just goes ham.
It's good that he died, because he was never going to eat right again.
And also, what I want to also point out, another reference again, is what we were talking about. The original Scream, Stu always like killed with two hands, and when you saw Billy kill, he always was like this with his hand and like did it like that. And the way she does it is holding it up just like Billy does, and just bam, 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 just like Billy. And I love that reference.
Right.
I mean, it could just be coincidental, but I just feel like, and it even does like a slow shot on it where she puts it up and it has it like this, and it even like close ups to it. And I'm like, I feel like that's referencing the way Billy stabbed people. And then she ends up going crazy, and then he's like, Richie's like, what about my movie?
Right.
And then she goes, here it comes.
Oh, God.
Slits his throat. You looked away.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
He was like, ugh. And then that's the end of Richie. And then Sydney was kind of going, oh, they always come back. And then, dude, Samantha's crazy, dude. She ends up taking the gun and just shoots him 4 times and shoots him in the head. And she goes, not my movie. Right. And then that's when Amber comes back.
Comes back in. And
she's
Tara,
like, half burnt with a knife.
Yep.
Yeah. And then Tara just goes, bop.
Yep.
So what did you think of all that? What have you thought of the ending here? Before we get to final verdicts, I'm curious on what you thought of the whole third act in general, just the third act.
I think it's paced well. I think its reveals are timed well. I think they are presented well. Mm-hmm. I think it's shot well. Like the scene where Amber is running right at the very end, that clip. Yeah. Like the camera moving with her is kind of shaky. It's interesting how well this movie is shot while also not having like very like you've got the pan out of like Stumacher's house. You know, like there's a lot of cool shots in this movie actually when there's even, I mean, most of the movie takes place at night or at a random spot in the middle of the day. There's not that much to see. But like like the headlights on the car earlier on, I know it's kind of earlier, but I think this movie shot extremely well and I think it shines
I agree.
well in the third act especially. So I don't know, I really like the third act and
agreed.
Honestly, we've pretty much talked about all of the third act. The final few minutes of the movie is just people saying you're going to be okay or you might be okay. That's it.
The best part about the ending is again they nod yet again to Scream 1, where how it ends with the zoom out on the Stumacher's house, and in the original Gale was the reporter talking, but there's another reporter talking, and then the sunrise is coming up. Like it ends just like the first one, and it's just.
And then we get the Ghostface slash right before the credits.
To like be like Wes Craven, like in the original where Ghostface before the credits, he would have Ghostface slash, which means he's coming back, and it does it again, and here we are getting Scream 6.
Yep.
And without Wes Craven being here, what did you think? Did you think this was a very good like praise to his legacy, or do you think they butchered it?
All right, so
that's final verdict, to be honest.
Baby, okay? So if you're ever going to see a clip of this on a short or something, this is probably what you're going to see. So final verdict, I think that you definitely feel that it's not a Wes Craven film anymore. Mm-hmm. However, I do believe that the characters that are in the movie are extremely faithful. There is a slight tonal shift with characters like Dewey and even the sheriff.
Judy Hicks. She's a little bit more serious.
But I think that goofiness is still in there. Yeah, but it complements the film better to have it brought back a bit. Because it makes the rest of the film, like the kind of tension and the kills and honestly the violence, it makes it shine, which is where the franchise needed to go, especially with more modern audiences.
Especially after Scream 3.
Yes.
I feel like after Scream 3, it felt like, I'm sorry to interrupt your final verdict here.
You're good.
I just felt like Scream 1 and 2 was set up amazing, a perfect blend of suspense and horror and and also the comedy aspect. It was blended so perfectly, and then Scream 3 just kind of threw every horror vibe out of it, and then and it wasn't even like Scream comedy. It was just slapstick funny. The only time you ever really seen Scream comedy in 3 was when Randy pops up on the VHS tape.
Yeah.
Like that's the only time that kind of screams, oh, this is a Scream again. I forgot. Right. Like there are some certain things that shine in 3, and like I said, I still look fondly of it. But like you look at all these other Scream movies and it's just completely changed in the tone and the vibe of it. And 4 tried to go back to the original. And I think it did very well at doing that. It was more serious, but still had the comedy vibe. And I think this does just as well. I think this has another tone vibe change to more serious, probably even more than 4.
Right.
But still has the blend of comedy.
That's fair.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, that kind of gets your thoughts in with mine, and then I'm going to kind of say my negatives here now to kind of round out. First negative, I felt like too many characters may have lived. I do think that's a negative to this film. However, if they're setting up more characters that we know, cough. My throat got a little dry. I'm sorry.
He saw me take a drink, so he's like, oh, man.
But if they're setting up more characters that we know to kill in the next movie for a little more emotional value, I think it will pay off in a way that I will like. Mm-hmm. And I'll look back at this more fondly. Another thing I didn't really like was the overuse of teases in the third act. of who the killer could be. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Just the kind of, what if I'm the killer thing? I don't like that. I mean, the stuff like where it's the misdirects with characters like Richie, I enjoyed that way more than the verbal, like, oh, what if it's me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Didn't like that. Outside of that, I thought this movie was really good. And, there are extremely minor issues when it comes to I don't want to say pacing with characters. And I didn't even bring this up as a criticism earlier because it's more of a personal preference, but a little bit more time with some of the newer characters, especially considering that Gale and Sydney were kind of sidelined in this movie because it was Dewey's send-off. So Sydney felt irrelevant to this movie. Gale was relevant, but could have been in it more. I think, honestly, outside of the fact that Sydney got to say goodbye say something to Dewey on the phone, outside of that, I don't really think Sydney needed to be in the movie.
Yeah, she really didn't need to show up.
But it was cool seeing her back in Stu's house.
Yeah, and it was also awesome just to see
Great.
For them say hello, Sydney. Just getting another phone call.
Those are cool moments, but
it wasn't needed. But I understand what you're saying.
But the girl power stuff with Gale, great. It felt good, but it just didn't feel like this was the movie for her. Gale felt necessary because of her connection to Dewey. Mm-hmm. And I guess with Sydney's absence, I felt like we would have gotten a little more of Gale, potentially. And if not her, then maybe filling the vacuum with characters like Chad, who we didn't see as much, or even Liv. So with that being said, I rated the first Scream movie, did I go 8.5?
I think you said like 8, and then you said you could sway 8.5.
I'm going to go there again. I'm going to go 8.
Nice.
I think it's just as good as the original in a modernized way. It's interesting enough that this one follows kind of a similar, through line as far as plot points go, or at least, major plot points, third act and things like that. So ultimately, yeah, I really do think that this movie is an 8.
That's awesome. I like how you rated it pretty high.
Right at 8. It's pretty good. I
don't remember what you rated like Scream 4. I don't remember, but I do like how you I thought Scream 4 you rated pretty high too.
I thought I was going to be in such a way that I thought my rankings of the 5 movies that are out were going to be Scream 1, Scream 4, Scream 5,
Scream
and
2,
then 2, 1.
3. You mean 3?
2, yeah, 3. Sorry, 3 at the bottom.
Don't ever put 1 at the bottom. I'll kill you.
I'm just going down chronologically. But yes, I am now willing to say that I believe Scream 1 and then Scream 5 are the best. And then 4, 2, 3. So that's just me. That's how I like it. And what about you?
Well, honestly, with this being a movie that wasn't made by Wes Craven, the very first in the franchise, not produced by him, you have the TV show, which was good. I love the TV show. The first 2 seasons. 3rd season, we don't speak of. But with all the movies here in the movie franchise world here, this is the first one without Wes. We got Radio Silence in here to play, and dude, they did a fantastic job. I feel like all the references to all the things back in the old movies, like not just the original, but they reference things from 2, 3, and 4. They reference all of them. And I think that just shows how much love they have for the franchise, and I respect that. And they also, again, they changed the tone to a more serious vibe, and I'm totally cool with, as long as a meta commentary is in play and as long as there are comedy sprinkled throughout.
That's fair.
And it had all that. So I do love the whole more serious tone, more tension, more gore. Love it. Love it. Love it. But again, I think this movie is perfect because of how it blended. It just felt like a Scream 1 vibe. It had a blend perfectly. It didn't have too much comedy, but it wasn't taking itself too seriously.
Okay.
And that makes me rank it higher than 3 right off the bat. And I think that one of the things here is bringing the trio back. And bringing the trio back means I get to see my boy Dewey again. And he shined through this movie. And again, we talked about vibe changes and how his tone is a lot more serious other than the few times he shines to be comedic. And that's okay because he's older now. He's aged.
Right.
Yep. He retired. I understand why he's more mature. I get it. He's no longer the 22, 23-year-old he was in the original film where he apparently looked like a 12-year-old to Gale.
Right.
And I don't know. With all those changes, I thought I would be, because at first when I was watching the movie, I was like, he's serious. He's got a beard. He's like out in the trailer park. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but it makes sense. And nonetheless, it works very well. And though it pains me every time I see this scene, the hospital scene was one of the coolest scenes in the movie.
Shot very well.
Shot awesomely. And Dewey's death was one of my favorites in the movie franchise in general, because there's not just one blade used, there's two. And it goes up, and it's so cool. And it makes me sad to say that he's dead and he's gone forever, but killing off Dewey also gives you a little bit more bonus points for, yet again, like Randy, being ballsy.
Yeah.
And no other movie would ever dare. I feel like if Wes Craven came back and like made another movie, he wouldn't have killed Dewey. I don't think he would have killed the trio ever. I feel like they're so iconic. I don't think he would have touched them. So props to Radio Silence for doing something so over the top and crazy. I went in expecting someone to die anyway. I thought it was going to be Gale, but that's just because I wanted to hide in denial. I probably expected and definitely did expect Dewey to pass, but Gale was my least favorite.
Yeah.
And with all this in mind, the new characters were great. There was no character added that I hated, I think. And I remember all their names, like we talked about earlier. Scream 3, there's tons of characters. I'm a huge Scream fanatic. And if I wasn't putting bias aside, I'd probably rate all of them 10 out of 10 besides Scream 3, which I would rate like 7 or 8. And all the characters are great. All are memorable. Third act was fantastic. First act, making it to where a character lives, was different and fun.
Opening.
And the whole middle was, shot and done very well. The pacing was great. Everything about the movie was great. Let's be real. Mm-hmm. And it really, and like I know you said that you could feel that it was not made by Wes Craven, but like
just in tone a little bit.
Yeah, but like just the amount of references, the amount of blend and perfectness in that area, I feel like it just feels straight out of a Wes Craven film.
Well, a lot of that also does come down to the writing as well, though, correct? It is the
same writer, yeah. That's one thing. Scream 3.
The character treatments were the same.
That's what I feel like what hit Scream 3 really bad, is the writer was different, and all the other ones have been the same since. And 1, 2, 4, 5 have all been the same writer. Right. So I feel like that's why 3 suffered tremendously. But even coming back 11 years later, right? 11 years later, this still feels like a Wes Craven movie, and just like we talked about way back in the day with our other podcast, it always feels like all the Scream movies are good because they come back with an idea. They don't do a Halloween or a Friday the 13th where they bam, 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 franchise, movie, where they have no ideas. They're just pumping them out to make money.
Right.
And that speaks to me, and that's why this is one of my favorite franchises, and I'm probably going to lock this in. Oh, see, I'm thinking between 2 and 4, which I gave like 8.5s. And right now I'm really feeling like giving this movie a 9. And,
I would respect it.
But it's weird because sometimes I prefer 2 over 4. Sometimes I prefer 4 over 2. Sometimes I prefer 5 over all of them, or 2 over... It just depends on the mood I'm in and what I'm feeling. But like all of them, like I said, are perfect. I feel like all of them are perfect in their own ways besides 3. I feel like 3 obviously is flawed. So I'm going to... You know what? I'm feeling it. I'm locking it a 9. 9.
Well, there you have it, folks. An 8 and a 9 from the Popcorner podcast for Scream 5.
Are you excited for Scream 6?
I am, having watched this one, I liked it more this time around than I did before. I don't know why.
I honestly, me too. Like, I've watched it multiple times, but I feel like we were just in the mood for it. And just like watching it again, it was great.
And I am hyped for Scream 6 as of the time of recording. Is obviously releasing next week. But, right?
Yeah. I believe so. Maybe in 2 weeks.
No, it's 2 weeks because we're on a delay, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we don't record an episode next week, do we?
Nope.
Okay, cool.
But
time off.
Fun for you.
Yep, there will be no time gaps for anyone else watching. So, of course, stay tuned next week for Scream 6.
We're about to go order our tickets right now.
Yes, we're ordering tonight, and that'll be really fun. I'm excited for the movie. I don't know anything else about it, but I guess we'll cover it when that time comes.
I'm excited, dude. It's one of my most looking forward to movies. I'm so excited.
But with that being said, you can find me on this YouTube channel, and Boowenz, BOOWENZ.
Wrong way.
Huh?
I was pointing, but I went this way instead of that way.
Falling Hurts. That guy. That one. Anyway, that's it for us. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.
Peace.
All right, bye.